All rights reserved. No parts of this book may be reproduced in any form, except for the inclusion of brief quotations in a review, without permission in writing from the author or publisher.
Vladimir Derkach.
Vegas, baby, Vegas. Psychological parable. Rich people live in the future, poor, in the past. Happy people live in the present. His tired eyes, hidden by sunglasses, were not showing much interest in anything happening around him. He barely associated himself with the world, moreover with its movements and changes. A carelessly dropped coin almost caught his attention, but the white cobweb of oblivion dragged his body farther up. He was arrogantly going through the crowd on his way to nowhere from nowhere. Some cold ephemeral images were sparking in his mind, a ring, a mole, a puffy lip. Not far away there was a slightly worn-out girl pulling the grill down to close her store, bending to reach the lock next to the floor. Her tight yellow skirt shouted as she bent over that her butt was already big enough, and the snake-skin cowboy boots screamed for attention. Snake-skin? He stopped. I hope snake-skin is strong enough to contain her. Where's the damn bar? Where's the bar? Oh. I'm lost. A doorless corner forced him to hopelessly turn a 180 toward the strip. Being a limo driver, he hated to walk. His feet were lead, and it was only the third day in Vegas. What a shit. The thought dimmed as it stabbed him painlessly. No, life must be loved. In every manifestation. But I doubt it could be possible amidst of all this crap. Why did I waste my time studying that long, gaining the education, now an extra weight impeding my way? God. What is the horrible taste of all this in front of me? But that one, up there, has no taste at all. Everything is just a wild kitsch. Okay, I'll go the Christ mode. I'll try to love it. I love this monstrous declaration of human filth accumulated hages and poorly washed with various dogmas and religions. Masochistic delight. This thought made the cheeks blush and the walk acquired a levitating style. Other words, he walked joyfully, observing each step, feeling his connection to the ground. While lifting off his heel over the slippery asphalt covered by the sediments of pornographic cards and flyers, he felt himself all above this rain of the animal instinct arousing Vegas after each sunset. Hot blast of the Vegas wind hit his eyes. What a bone-dry blow, he thought. How do they all live here in such heat? He noticed a young dude walking towards him. The beer bottle he held was empty and his eyes were glowing with happiness. It's like a neon sign of Harrah's. Thank God. At least someone is blessed. I'll accept it as a balance, he thought. Otherwise I'll flood the whole world with my spewed bile of negativity. It eased up. All of a sudden, he remembered that he was tipped in advance. It was the first time it happened in his life. But this $1,000 tip hasn't brought him one hint of peace or joy. It was suspending over him like a burden of responsibilities and vague expectations he couldn't predict, for sure. None of which was the least bit desirable. One always falls in prostration when a large sum of unexpected money is received. Beer. Beer must help. But why do they all close at 9 p.m.? In Vegas? Give me a break, it's a night city. Fine. Here it is, one booth with pills, bananas and refrigerator for beer. His targeting gaze detected one girl and a boy in the queue, holding a happily ever after bottle of Bud Light each. A feeble wave of pure irritation faintly nudged him to make a diagnosis for this country. How is it possible to drink this? It didn't thunder at all under the clear skies. But it had to. However, after 9 p.m. the thunder doesn't work. It looks like this Planet Hollywood's shtick was in need of having some rest too. The driver didn't know it. The baked desert city was like an oven. He sat on the fountain board and wet his lips with a bottle covered in dew. It was cold in his fingers. Interestingly, Las Vegas midnight heat makes one's body cold in comparison to the air, like frigid hot dogs from the refrigerator. Shaking hands is unpleasant. As far back as he can remember, he drank on empty stomach. One day, back there in his distant romantic Soviet galaxy, after having read all those books infested with the gulls named Jonathan Livingstone and produced by Richard Bach and also Epicurean, he tried to drink on a fasting binge. What a metamorphosis was to follow. And to tell the truth, it's cheaper. Global outlook on life favored not mixing food and wine. So, he didn't. But today was something different. Beer sneaked down, belched up spontaneously and died, The world didn't change. Cool, he thought weakly. Why not go to a club? T-shirt. I'm in a t-shirt. I am in a noisy hole flooded with the grown-up Oklahoma gulls and their freaked-out alcoholic freedom fats. Approaching Harrah's casino, he saw the dance pole brought from nowhere that somehow anchored on the roulette table. The iconic showgirl was dancing by it and was pretty nice looking for her 30s. The hard rock beat makes her body pulsate from side to side. Her vacant look blanketed the crowd with an omnipresent indifference. Down here, she was a queen. He hasn't seen such wild beauty in a while. His eyes glued to her slum vinyl shorts. But when her pelvis touched the sparkly chrome of the pole, he nervously squeezed a fist. He stopped frozen. A vapid welcoming smile suitable for every scene and situation sparked on his face. So much sexual energy was emitting from the dancer. She noticed him and answered by transferring a heavy-laden look. He felt like a pumpkin in front of a stopped tank. It was something beyond the limits of his understanding and out of his control. And he was directly in the path of being run over. He searched like an orphan for non-existent help around and looked at her again. Only now, she was not only pushing him with eyes, she was creeping into him, into his inner core. Fracturing his will and messing with his ego. He wasn't in a mood to rebel. He surrendered at once without a fight. Cold goosebumps ran from the crown of his head down his back. He felt like a shiny pillar of energy which strokes Las Vegas sky. And at that particular moment, if you looked just so, you would see two beacons flash into existence, one above Luxor and another over Harrah's. Having thrown her mane of hair forward, as if trying to finish him, she thrummed like a tuned string, watching him and widely spreading her legs. It was too much, he gave in. The music was rhythmically continuing to pump up the smoky air of the casino. She kept looking at him. And he, as if suddenly remembering of something very important, undone and lousy, turned away and focused himself farther, feeling her eyes drill into his back. 3 minutes of the meandering and squeezing through the crowd of looky-loos, gamblers and the Mexicans handing out porno cards helped him finally to find himself. Such power, he thought, such power. Somewhere from above the voice reached him. Hi, buddy, how are you? The Caravella. On the deck, 6 feet above the melted crowd there was a bunch of people, already impressively loaded with beer, and one of them was giving high fives to every passerby. Exactly, there I go. At least 6 feet up, and I'll be out of this shitty swamp. He got up the stairs and ordered a glass of beer. The glass was of a thin plastic barely giving a sense of stability. But the Caravella also was not the most fundamental place on earth. It was pleasant to stay over the floating human river though. So, vamos. He announced without a chance to be heard by a soul and gulped up the content. It dissolved into the body fast and the world got enlightened. A strange noise drew his attention. It was a group of people with a knot of impressive-sized gentlemen performing parlor tricks. The cards were just flying in his hands. He pulls his sleeves and touches this or that spectator. The magician was making cards appear out of t-shirts, trousers, ties. Every minute had the entire company boiling with the joyful screams and applause. Somehow, the barrier of alienation was bridged and people were gently pushing one another and slapping each other's shoulders in a friendly manner. It was pure contentment in the brotherhood of gentleness. My thousand. An icy thought pierced the brain. He is a crook, this magician. I'll leave this place without my pants if I stay any longer. Despite the Vegas oven, his millenniums of instinct froze him mysteriously. It made the hair stand up on the back of his neck. His pupils dilated and his hand nervously stretched towards his pocket. There, in his tired jeans, exhausted by the heat, indifferently sat that damn 1,000 of tips. Good job. He encouraged himself. Right on team. All is well, where it should be. Again, a resounding echo of music pulsed into his ears and an explosion of laughter squeezed out of him, capped with a poor illusion of a grin. When the magician mystically popped up the 7 of diamonds out of a half-empty bottle of Corona held by a girl hardly standing on high heels, the driver knew that it's time to move on. The idea of leaving the Caravella before it sunk didn't please him much, but the whole picture was totally ruined by that restless grand in his pocket. 12 years of struggle against poverty nailed him down so awfully that he was planning his life in accordance to a budget, not a dream. His childhood trips to other cities or planets, while sitting on a red coach, were now seeming a manifestation of a rare disease which was unknown to any of his relatives or friends. He hasn't remembered where reality was or where the world was fantasy. Absolutely hasn't. Then there wasn't any difference. And in today's present world he, instead of putting this 1,000 on a table and win to, at least in his dreams, he almost chickened out of this drunk, happy company of harmless youth. He couldn't dream anymore. He's transformed into an observer. All he had, a family, a car and health, was not enough for him. Not that he wanted more, no, he wasn't satisfied with what he had. But the worst thing was that he didn't know what else he wanted. Suddenly he realized how hard it was to be just an observer of his own life. The most shameful part was the awareness that he feared to dream. His time machine and translocation device broke down. His limitless dreams got stuck somewhere. And is it so heavily used that this mechanism is now broken and nobody can fix it? Before, he might have moved into the world where his $1,000 was put on the table and would double up after the drum stopped. Excited glances would accompany him to the cashier window where he would take the gain. Sure enough, he would make a joke, following an American tradition to goof around. He might say, "Fine. I won't rob you today. I may come tomorrow." And the cashier would answer half seriously, also playing a comedy club, that tomorrow they have scheduled a maintenance day. Remembered that he's a limo driver, he went into the parking to grab the vehicle and go back to his damn hotel. The hot air was making his head feel twice as big. That is why the aliens love Nevada so much, he thought. They have such huge heads, they fit in. Let a horse think it has a large head, his grandma used to say. The open car door belched a wave of heat that the driver decided not to turn on the AC and only opened the windows. Incandescent mixture of perfumes, plastic rugs and a gas moved with the vehicle, periodically spilling out on the turns and stops. Fine. I need to fill it up. Up there, by the Luxor, is the lowest price. And he, gracefully like a local, skipped the famous Vegas's traffic, despite on so-called financial crisis. Crisis, he grinned. The boulevard is a parking lot, the sidewalks are impassable. The bars are sardine cans, the line waiting at the restaurants is huge. Who would call this a crisis? Then a thought hit his brain. If they have been crushed during the 30s the same way, I don't have a itsy-bitsy pity for them. He, being in the USA for 5 years, never had appointed himself as an American. The ideology platforms are way too different than they have professed. The gas station was sluggishly convulsing with its clients. The fuel gobblers, decorated with license plates of different states, were sucking at the pumps and vaguely grumbling something. Their masters were erratically moving around, squeegeeing the suicidal moths off the windshield and shuttling over to the register to pay. A Nebraska truck rolled out of the way. He got out of his vehicle and noticed a truck in the distance lay on its belly. One of those trucks that gardeners use. It was literally flat on the asphalt, though it had wheels. He followed his Soviet habit of locking everything possible while not present. He slipped the nozzle in and went to the register. 60 on 4, he said. That is the way they say it. Despite their mismatch on political outlook, the cashier and the driver spoke the same language. Sometimes he was even understood. Typical case, he thought, observing the body slowly separating from the truck which lay on the asphalt. Now he will approach and say that, "I've lost my flock and a quarter or two will help enormously," or some shit like that. The prefabricated phrase spat out to his brain. "Sorry, man. Tomorrow, no problem, but today, sorry, okay?" When what's going through his mind is, "What? You want me to break my 1,000 for the sake of a couple of coins for you?" While being busy with the gas station routine and polishing already squeaky clean windows, he noticed in his peripheral vision that the bum had no face. That is, there had to be a face. Otherwise, where would the request for a quarter come from? But the hood was empty. And his outfit was awesome. Imagine the classical cliché. A Chicago's winter beggar warming up by a metal trash can, stretching hands over the fire. So, it was him. Straight up from Chicago and wearing a double puff jacket. It was unclear how he remained alive in this temperature outside and inside. "Okay, man, you've polished even better than a sparkly quarter shines, which would help me today," pronounced the bum. A poet, mother fadger, thought the driver. A blank stare fired out of the hood. The driver, who has lived in America for years, was not yet used to those forward looks, eyes to eyes. He even trained himself in front of a mirror with zero result. It was same self in the mirror, but in life there was someone else. He redirected the eyes to the display, pretending to be involved in a $1,000,000 race. Better 1,000. 1,000 would help me a lot today, continued the vagrant, trying to get the attention back. The driver looked at him, trying to think how to answer, then replied in swagger mode. You won't be saved even with 1,000. But you don't need it at all. Confused and hurt, the bum declared. He turned away towards his truck and slowly, as waiting for a sudden call, went off. After he acquired his usual position back to the door, he imperatively yelled. You'd better go to the casino, put your 1,000 on 22 or whatever. You may win 1,000,000. Then you'd be more generous, huh? The nozzle cheerfully banged out, done. The driver looked on the display. 22 gallons. Full tank. Stop. 22. He searched for the bum. But the truck was gone and so was the bum. 22, he repeated out loud, walking towards the cashier to grab the receipt. Bright neon light of sizzling white lamps in the ceiling sobered him a little. Yellow, red and orange candy wrappers, some radiant and sparkling, transparent plastic casings of jerky of all kinds, were trying to steal his attention of the receipt content. Where, similar to a mirage in a desert, weakly, but insistently, was manifesting two numbers, 22. What a lark, he cried. With habitual ease, in one move, the key turned on the engine. Scorching desert air flashed over the already hot limousine body. His eyes routinely touched the radio screen. 2222. My lord, everything is going out of whack now, he thought. If a UFO lands in front of me in 22 yards, I will definitely go out of my mind. That bum was a cool freak, by the way. A mentalist, I think. He knows I have 1,000. But, hold on. Who doesn't in this city? It's Vegas, baby, Vegas. He calmed himself down a little and continued on his way to that damn hotel, which became now a part of his life. Surely, all these trips, they kick you out of a rut. But work is work. Besides, I like it. New people, new places, new food. Mentalist vagrants walk in my path sometimes. Go find a job. What is good in America? That there aren't any smart asses to be found. Not too many rivals for us, immigrants from Europe. For instance, Vegas is unique. But take a look at those parking lots. The only two casinos intelligently laid out are Bellagio and Wynn. His quick rise, in taking the ramp to the roof, let him grab the space right next to the entrance. Stupid people. They will run for half-hour in search of a spot 1 yard closer to the door, when the roof parking is empty. He grinned mercilessly while leaving his limo. His phone suddenly rang. Listen, you. Stay around for a bit. In couple of hours, I'll call you. But don't go to your hotel. I need you. That was his boss, a workaholic. Old, but generous. Usual thing, the driver rang off and put the phone into his pocket. I hate this enforced idleness. Dolce far niente, my ass. I can't stand it anymore. But the roof does have a great view. The boulevard was a mirrored image of the Milky Way. It kicked him back to one December night in starry Crim. He was 17. He went into town, as they do say even today, to buy some fresh bread and bumped into his cousin's girlfriend. For some unknown reason, she offered to go to the theater to watch a movie. The name? It all sank into an abyss. He was such a fool. With 2 fragrant baguettes in a bag and a blush on his cheeks, he agreed. He simply wasn't able to invent anything to refuse her, even he hadn't any feelings for her. He had to stick with his decision or be embarrassed. It was a widescreen film. Wide as life, she commented. God, how many poets live among us and we don't even notice them. Only now, 30 years later, can he grasp it. She was sitting next to him, smelling of a young and excitable girl, but the bread also was fragrant. It was a 2-part movie. To make a long story short, you could write a book filled with the sensations of youth and hunger. She was older him by 1 year and probably more experienced. Later on, while observing the crowd, he noticed some men. They were taller and stronger, but at their core, just silly boys. But women, even girls, regardless of age, were mothers, and that was what scares a man. The film ended and spectators poured out onto the frosty street. The girl turned to him and told him, "I'll be right back. Need the bathroom. You wait here. I'll be quick, okay?" Okay. This two-part widescreen masterpiece was also squeezing his kidneys, and he turned and ran like a Mustang rushing down to his freedom. Hopefully he would return to their meeting spot before the girl noticed he was disobedient to her directions. Here and now, 30 years apart of that event, he smiled, recalling that restroom standing 50 yards aside of the movie theater building, smelly and dark. Here in America, this would be probably the same nonsense as the presence of bums/aliens at the gas station. After the movie, when they were almost alone, they went down the snowy street in the direction of home. She took his hand with her knitted mitten, soft and warm, while murmuring something. Doesn't matter what. She was slowly walking and swinging the arm back and forth, blending with every step. Sometimes she slipped and grabbed for him with both hands. That was very pleasant. He liked being the one she relied on. The one who supported her on icy paths in times of need. After making it to the side of the central street with dimly lit rare lanterns glowing yellow, they took the road that was as white as the driven snow. All sound was muffled into eternity. The horizon mimicked the background of a puppet theater, where the silhouettes of the mountains were flat like cardboard cutouts. The chief artist didn't skimp on the diamonds and sapphires, and pre-Christmas sky was glittering with the light of cold alien stars. The bread in the bag got frozen and was fidgeting on the bottom. Despite of the daytime holiday hustle and bustle in town, now there was no a single soul around. She slowed down by her house but didn't stop. It was like an intention to pose a question. What are we going to do? He didn't smoke and wasn't an expert in conversation, even worse with girls. Besides, he was junior to her by a year, and this girl was the girlfriend of his cousin. What could he offer her? Words got stuck in throat. And again she bailed him out. "Well, do you want to see the dog star? I'll show you," whispered she into his eyes in lowering voice. "But you can't see it from here. The trees are blocking the view. Let's go down to the creek." He cheerfully followed her. There, at the border of civilization and wilderness, among the snow-covered banks, was running a mountain creek, jingling and sparking by the myriad of galaxies. "Here we are." She poked the frosty air with her nose. "The dog star. Up there, and afar, far away, sonorous silence, blinking to them both, was shining the brightest star of the winter sky. "It's getting cold," she said. He clumsily pulled his mittened hands under her arms, hugged her and gently drew towards himself. She hugged him in response. He slowly approached, kissed her upper lip. The unknown scent of her foreign perfume, elegant and exotic, knocked him out. She moved her head slightly back, holding her fur hat with a mitten, and asked, "Kiss me one more time. I'll gaze the stars. At the dog star, Sirius. I'll dream and you kiss me." Her murmur seemed to be a continuation of that magical stars discussion held every frosty glimmering night since a dawn of time. He wouldn't be able to count all kisses given to him by girls and women after that distant night, but that Sirius kiss was the only one he remembered. He remembered every detail down to a fraction of a second. What was interesting was that with the passing of years, its freshness and sweetness hasn't flown away. The same stars were twinkling above his head now, 30 years later. He was standing, bored at the parking level of one of the most famous and luxurious casinos in the world, staring at the central boulevard of Las Vegas, lit by camera flashes. The strobe effect destroyed the tiny itch to enjoy the masquerade. He felt himself weighed down with unclear concerns, detached from this shimmering heaven and entirely unable to undertake any effort suited to shift his life into a better direction.
End of Part 1.